Hello, and welcome back to the Byline. I'm joined today by Ben, and we are going to go through a couple of different topics today. And we're going to start off with the game that we've just watched. As you can see, the Birmingham City fan is sitting there in his Arsenal shirt, so no
Yep.
prizes for guessing what team he was supporting today. And then for me, Liverpool all the way, quite consistent in that. So Ben, welcome to the show. Great
Thank you.
game.
It's a very good game for the neutrals, and obviously I'm a Birmingham City fan, but Arsenal's always been my second team. So for me, it was a big game. It was a bit nerve wracking. I thought after going 2-0 up, looking extremely comfortable, possibly if that had went up another gear, maybe could have hit 3. I thought Liverpool were on the ropes fairly early on, within the first 35 minutes or so. But it is what it is, and obviously that goal before half time changed the team sort of for both of them. I think that second half Liverpool just turned up a gear. I think Arsenal, whether they could or couldn't push on, I think they did choose to sit back a little bit more, which allowed Liverpool that bit more space, and maybe assumed that a counter attack would have been the best way to get the third and seal the game off. And like last 5 minutes,
So do you think then?
what they did.
Do you think the second half then was more of a tactical decision from Arsenal, as opposed to a change of play from Liverpool, which kind of forced Arsenal back?
It's going to be a bit of both, isn't it? I don't think Arteta has turned around and said, right, drop 5 yards back, let Liverpool put the pressure on and soak it up. But I do think there was probably an element of, let's look for the turnover, let's look for the mistake, let's look for Liverpool to push the players up and then hit the counter attack, because Jesus and Saka and Martinelli were the furthest 3 forward, I guess, and the break was, especially from the 65th, 70-minute on, the break was always on. But obviously with Liverpool, they're always going to come out the second half and fight, because they need to grab that goal, or even that second goal to go and win, obviously to continue their hopes of a top 4. So I think it's probably a bit of both. I think Liverpool were better in the second half. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think Arsenal took the first half.
I think from my point of view, the one thing that stands out to me is that obviously it was mentioned a lot on TV. The lashing out from Xhaka. Obviously, it wasn't a terrible lashing out. It wasn't a red card offence or anything, but it was something that sparked a reaction from Trent. I think before that moment, Trent obviously is a new position for him today. I think he was deployed more as a defensive midfielder with the role of also covering the right hand side. And then what you notice a lot more was the centre back splitting a little bit. So Canate would also cover the right hand side. Van Dijk would drop into the centre, and then Robertson would almost make a third centre back in a defensive pattern. Once that incident happened with Xhaka, I think that pumped up the crowd, it pumped up Trent, it pumped up the Liverpool team as a whole. And I think from that moment, we saw a Liverpool team that it kind of reminded me a lot like how we've played in previous seasons. We were pressing Arsenal on the ball. We were trying to win it back high up the pitch. We were trying to win it back in the middle of the park. We were winning a lot more tackles. We were getting stuck in. We were, even to a certain extent, Fabinho looked good. He got a yellow card for a foul on Saka because he noticed that the run of Jesus behind him and he knew that he had to bring him down. There was decisions that Liverpool were making that were far better and far more like the old Liverpool than what we've seen from Liverpool so far this season. And I think that kind of forced Arsenal back 5 yards up the pitch. They still look to hit with Saka and Martinelli on the wings, but then I think that it was almost like, from a Liverpool point of view, it was almost like they suddenly realised how they were meant to be playing. Canate was getting over onto the right-hand side to help Trent out, so they were doubling up on him. And it was almost like a clever defensive performance from Canate more than Trent, in the fact that he was happy to show Martinelli outside him. And then when Martinelli went outside him, Canate would then use his strength to get the ball off him and not give away the fouls.
Yeah, I think Canate's second half especially was probably Liverpool's one of Liverpool's best players, because he stopped everything. He used his strength. He got his body in the way. He read the play. I don't think Martinelli had many chances to get around him, but I think with Trent, the problem with Trent, like everyone in the country knows now that he's not a great defender. And I think this midfield position is just it was just a bit strange to see him go there in a game like today at this stage of the season. It was just a bit random, and I think the first sort of 5 minutes you could see that Martinelli was just getting straight at Trent when he was in that sort of right back position, and he got past him a couple of times really early on. But when Trent is in that midfield and he's picking up the loose balls, the second balls, or he's playing that forward pass, or he's making that break, he looks a lot better. And I don't think anyone doubts that with Trent.
Yeah, I think
He's,
obviously everyone knows that from an attacking point of view, I genuinely think that there's no better attacking right fullback in the Premier League than Trent. It's the defensive side that does let him down. And I think it's been exposed a lot more this season. And if you bear with me, obviously we're going to go a little bit in depth later on about how Liverpool have performed this season in comparison and what I think about them. But in previous seasons, what Liverpool have done very well is they've employed Henderson as the right-sided centre mid. And what he would do is if Trent's pushing forward, Henderson would then sit a little bit deeper and cover that right-sided flank to help if Trent does get exposed or if Trent gets caught out when he's pushing forward. Henderson would almost make like double up as a secondary right back to help him out in that scenario. And I think it's been a tactical change from Klopp this season to stop that from happening. Obviously, Elliott has played a lot of games this season as the right-sided centre mid, being left-footed. That's the position that he wants him to be in. But obviously, Elliott lacks the defensive qualities that Henderson has. And then obviously you've got a decline in performances from other players like Fabinho and Henderson as well. But that has led to Trent being a lot more exposed than perhaps he would have wanted to have been, knowing obviously his defensive frailties. I think moving him forward into that sort of defensive midfield role, I like the change. I think it's a good change. I think it's a positive change. I think it's one that Trent can fully get behind. For me, it was just strange to see it happening against Arsenal.
So if it's one that you can kind of get behind, then do you think in the summer Liverpool need to buy a new right back and then employ Trent as that right centre mid that, as you define, as what Henderson would be doing or naturally doing?
I think that one thing that I noticed, particularly again in the Chelsea game, that when we had Joe Gomez as right back, I was sitting there thinking this wouldn't be a bad back three. You got Gomez, Konate, Van Dijk. That could be the makings of a good back three. Then you can employ Trent more as a right wing back, Robertson as a right wing back, and then see how that goes. And I think that was something that I would, seeing Trent get forward. But the thing I liked about Trent's performance today is that he wasn't limited to the right-hand side. He was kind of covering all aspects of the pitch. He was getting on the left sometimes, operating through the centre. I think if Liverpool do decide to kind of go ahead and press ahead with a new sort of tactical role for Trent, possibly a new right back. Obviously, we have got Calvin Ramsey, who's been ruled out for the rest of the season. I think he was brought in to provide A, cover and B, competition for Trent. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes. But if we look at how, for example, Man City play, and even to a certain extent Arsenal with Zinchenko, they have one fullback that kind of doubles up as a centre midfielder, and then you have the other three fill in. The only difference is that when you look at Man City, they always tend to operate with Nathan Ake as their left back because he can play the centre back role. I don't know if Robertson can play the centre back role, and I think that's the part that I would be looking at thinking, does this tactical shift for Trent mean something has to change with Robertson? The only thing I could think is perhaps if Fabinho playing as a defensive midfielder, if he dropped back to make a back three at times, but he didn't do that today. I don't know whether that was like a lack of time on the training pitch to perfect this sort of tactic, or if it was put in.
The thing is that these kind of things, these kind of tactics, so Guardiola's developed that over X amount of seasons, and I think Arteta has probably tried to, but he's needed the right players to doing it, and then bringing Zinchenko was that, knowing that he's done that with Man City and under Guardiola, he can probably has been able to implement it this season. But I think going back to Trent as well, when you mentioned that obviously Henderson would stick in there, and if Henderson would do the job, or whoever that right centre mid would be, then obviously it'd be a bit easy. But I feel like with Trent, if a winger is up 1-on-1 against him, the chances are the winger's probably going to do something. I'm not saying all the time,
Yeah,
but I think that's where his defensive frailties lie, and I don't
I
think
think
anyone can overly justify that otherwise, in my opinion.
no, I agree, and I think this is where I was kind of coming from in terms of the way Liverpool operated last season. Is that if you do have a Henderson and Trent doubling up on a sort of a wing player, it covered a lot of Trent's frailties because you could have Henderson protecting from the cut inside, and then you can have Trent covering from like showing them on the outside, and then Trent can kind of pick up that run. What we're seeing is that Trent, he's not. See, the biggest thing I'd say about Trent is he's not commanding in his position. It's almost like he kind of wants to show a player outside, and then when they go outside, he doesn't have that commanding presence to then go and win the ball back. Like we noticed it a lot with Konate when in the second half, especially that when Martinelli was coming up against Konate would say, "You're only going to beat me if you go outside, man." Martinelli done it, and then Konate would just use his power to get in there and win the ball back. Trent doesn't have that power. He doesn't have that sort of commanding presence, so I don't know if that's something that perhaps can be built into Trent now. I don't know. At his age, you kind of think that he is what he is in terms of a defender.
Yeah, I can't see from a defensive perspective. I can't see him being a better defender because he would be a better defender now if he could. But I think at the same time, I think I get where you're coming from because I guess 2 years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the conversation of Trent's a poor defender was happening at that time. I think it's only over the past sort of last season and this season, especially where the sort of criticism that came. And in my opinion, rightly so, I don't think he's been a great defender at all. But if he was to adopt a new centre mid position, would he be a starter?
I think it depends on the role that you want to play him in. Because obviously, Trent playing as a centre mid now would completely change the way that Liverpool are playing. So let's go back to what you said, that if you look at how Trent played last season and then this season, you'll say that he's been exposed for not being a good defender. I would then say to you, okay, well, what's changed about Liverpool this season? Why last season wasn't there the comments, and then this season there is? And the answer is that Harvey Elliott's played a lot more games, and he always plays on that right centre mid role. Now, Harvey Elliott, don't get me wrong, I think in a poor season for Liverpool, he's been one of the shining lights. Him and Bajcetic have both been really good in terms of like Harvey Elliott. I think he's featured probably in the most games for Liverpool. I think up until maybe the Chelsea game, he played a part in every game. But what you notice with Harvey Elliott is he hasn't got that defensive mindset. And then Henderson coming back in today, it was almost like Henderson's role was different. They wanted to push Henderson 5 yards up the pitch because they were kind of saying, well, Trent will do that role now. You don't have to worry about it. So I think there's a little bit of consistency that Liverpool haven't had. So if you take a look at Liverpool, the way that they normally line up, when Robertson pushes forward, you have Van Dijk that will cover that left-hand side. And then you used to have Fabinho that would be in the middle, who he would also protect the back three so that the back two could split. Van Dijk could almost cover that left-back position. Matip at the time could cover the right-sided position. Then Fabinho would protect that centre. You'd also have Henderson on the one side who would protect Trent. Robertson never had that because he was always the better defender of the two anyway. So that's fine. Liverpool don't play that way this season. Liverpool play... I don't know if it's a tactical shift that Liverpool have had. I really don't. Because it worked so well for them before, and it's like, okay, well, why aren't we doing this anymore? So maybe there was a change from Klopp that said, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. And then that's left Trent exposed. So then...
I think you find as well, though, I'm sorry to jump in, I think you find with the Liverpool team, that, especially what I've noticed today anyway, is that Salah doesn't get back. He'll stay pretty much on the halfway line. But then on the left, whether it's Jota or Nunes, they were back.
Yeah.
And sort of in that sort of deeper...
I think that kind of goes into what I said, because on the right-hand side, you always had your Henderson, who would be the player to drop back. On the left-hand side, you'd have whoever it is, Darwin, Jota, Mane even done some defensive work when he was there. And then you have Fabinho, who would drop back into almost like a centre mid role to do some covering there. And it's worked well for Liverpool in the past. The problem this season is that players aren't covering for each other. And yes, Trent has been exposed. Trent moving into the middle of the pitch asking, do I think if it'll be if he'll be better there, if he'll be like a natural starter there. I suppose it depends on what Klopp wants to get for him. If he wants Trent to do that role that Henderson has done for so long, so to say, okay, well, you are now that defensive orientated midfielder, but a playmaker at the same time. You need to cover on the right hand side. Then the question is, okay, well, who plays right back? If it's a change of formation and change of tactic completely to sort of mirror what Man City are doing, where their back four actually becomes a back three and their fullback becomes a midfielder. Again, it depends on who Liverpool's back three are. Like the one thing that we noticed, take for example, Jesus' goal. When the ball came over, a lot of people were saying about how, a lot of the commentators were saying how Van Dijk was caught under the ball. But the one thing I thought was that if Liverpool are now suddenly playing as a back three, you'd want Van Dijk to be that in the centre, and then it would have been Robertson who was actually covering the ball at the back post, which he tried to do, but obviously it was a poor effort, and it was what you'd expect a fullback's challenge to be like. You know,
I mean, of all the goals that Arsenal could have scored today, I don't think anyone would have put a header down.
probably not.
Gabriel
No.
Jesus.
But then if you're asking Konate to almost fill in as right back, you've then got to get Van Dijk to move over to the centre, and you've then got to cover what Van Dijk's normal position as the left-sided centre-back of the two with Robertson. And I think Arsenal played that ball really well because they kind of put it in between the two positions of where Van Dijk had moved over to sort of cover the position that you'd expect him to as a centre-back of a back three. And then Robertson, obviously, I don't know if it was because not enough time has been worked on the tactic or if he was just caught out in that particular moment. They Arsenal seemed to drop the ball right in between those two. And it was a great ball, great goal, great header.
Yeah.
So then my question would be, if we are going to start asking Henderson, if we're going to start asking Trent to cover that role, that fullback / centre-back role, does Robertson fit into that formation?
Look, how you do it. I mean, I think it's funny as well that Klopp's kind of seen Arsenal, Man City adapt this and thought, oh, I'm going to try that myself, and I'm going to use Trent as the person that does it.
I think it was. You look at how Liverpool have played this season. We haven't really offered anything. Like, okay, there's been bright sparks. Bournemouth 9-0, Man U 7-0, and some good games in between. But on the whole, we don't look like a team that are like the old Liverpool. And this is from top to bottom. Obviously, take a look at today's game. Salah missed his second penalty in a row. There was also times where Salah's one-on-one with the fullback and you're thinking, go on, Salah, you can do it here. And then he loses the ball. There's other times as well where Arsenal have got the ball in the middle of the pitch and there's no players pressing. And so pressing's been a big problem.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I think as well, you couldn't play out from the back.
Yeah. The one time where we kind of looked a lot more like the old Liverpool was when Darwin got released on the left-hand side. If that's Mane, he scores. Darwin obviously didn't score. So when you look at Liverpool from yesteryear, this Liverpool now aren't the same team. They're struggling in a lot of different ways. The biggest thing for me, and it's the one thing that I'm surprised hasn't been picked up a lot more by whenever I watch Liverpool, whether it's on Sky Sports or BT or wherever else I watch it. The biggest thing for me that Liverpool have struggled with this season is passing. The amount of times that I've seen Liverpool give the ball away, whereas Liverpool, if you go back 1, 2, 3 years, Liverpool were by far the best team in possession. They could keep the ball, knock it round, and it would almost be like how you see Man City play. You know, they don't lose the ball when they've got it. This season, they get the ball, and the amount of times they give away possession cheaply, I don't know what it is. It just...
Look, we've got Mark Roberts for Blues, so I know exactly what you're saying with that.
Yeah, but it's like a lot of the times as well, it's simple passes. It's the simple passes that hurt the most because it's ones where, say, you win the ball back Like if you think from the mind of a Liverpool defender, let's say for example you're Trent, you've just won the ball back, and then you play the ball into Henderson, and then Henderson plays a sloppy pass and gives it straight back to the opposition, and then they come back at you again. The amount of times that you put yourself under pressure as a defender, at some point you're going to make a mistake. At some point you're going to start getting frustrated. At some point it's gonna grind on you no matter what. The one thing for me is that the amount of times that Liverpool rely on Alisson to bail them out of it, that I'm surprised that Alisson hasn't just gone around and started banging players' heads together, saying, "What the hell are you doing?" It's a strange one. And then to see Liverpool give away possession so much, and it was the same today in the first half. It was winning the ball and then stupid pass, either looking down the wing to try and release Jota or Salah, or whether it was like playing the ball in the middle. We were losing the ball, we were giving the ball away cheaply and then inviting Arsenal back onto us, and then it's okay.
Yeah, I would think it was more, rather than you losing the ball, I think Arsenal's press was forcing you to give the ball away,
Whilst
because
I agree with that, the one thing I will say is as soon as Thiago came on, Arsenal's press was
a bit
almost
more composure.
it
But
was
the press wasn't really happening in the second half, though.
because they tried it a couple of times against Thiago, and his vision and his range of passing, he would trick them. He'd look like he's going to play it one way, but then outside of the foot onto the other direction. He's actually press resistant, and that's something that we've missed as a team.
And Thiago lost the ball to Xhaka on your own 18-yard box. And it's only because of poor ball from Xhaka to Martinelli that you got away with it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that like he's
Yeah,
the best player in the world. What I'm saying is that like that's a highlight there, that Arsenal were still trying to press and win the ball higher up, but we looked a lot more confident when Thiago came on. A lot more of the play went through him. He was dictating the play a lot more. Arsenal tried to press him a few times. He beat the press and then was looking to, okay, what's the next pass that I can play? We just looked, especially the second half, we looked a bit more like our old selves with this new tactical tweak. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having, because obviously the other thing that I would think is that if this is a new tactical tweak from Liverpool now, and if this is something that we're genuinely going to look to keep, you can't have Milner in this formation, obviously.
Oh, God, no.
And also, to a certain extent, you can't have Henderson in this formation. He played okay today, but he wouldn't be able to play you 38 games next year in a more advanced role, which, essentially what you're asking the midfielder, the Henderson midfielder to be, is a box-to-box midfielder. Obviously,
Henderson's captain because he just shouts the whole game.
Yeah,
He need a voice.
I've got no issues with Henderson being captain, but that role that Henderson played today, like I know there's been a lot of rumours, a lot of speculation, whether or not you believe it. If Liverpool signed a Bellingham to play how Henderson played, or the position that Henderson played today, this new formation could tick over quite nicely.
But I think not making Champions League will effectively put an nail in the coffin with a Bellingham deal, because
Potentially,
Bellingham doesn't need to go to a team that's not in the Champions League.
yeah,
He
but
was at Dortmund.
I don't think that us not being in the Champions League would effectively write us off from signing him. I think that we do face an uphill battle to get him, but I think if Liverpool have a long-term plan in place, which involves spending money, it could be something that could tempt Jude to say, like, look, we're not going to be in the Champions League this year, but we're planning on strengthening this area, this area, this area, this area, this area. This is what our plan is. This is what we hope to achieve. This is where we're going to go, and lay out a blueprint. I think if you look at Jude, as you'll know, being a Birmingham City fan, he had offers from Man United before joining Dortmund. And a lot of people would have turned around at that time and said, well, why are you joining Dortmund? You can join Man United, one of the biggest teams in the Premier League. But obviously he was thinking long term. He was thinking about his career and about what he can achieve.
Play football.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any. I don't think anyone would disagree if I said that Liverpool at the moment, out of the teams that are in for him, so Man City, Real Madrid, Liverpool being the main three. I think PSG came into it yesterday, and there's been some kind of murmurings about Chelsea, but I don't think Chelsea are realistically in the running. Liverpool, out of those ones, are the ones where you'd say that, yeah, he's guaranteed first team football every week.
I think he's gotten into a position now that he could be first team for any team. I think he walks into the Man City squad right now.
He could be, but I think as a footballer, I'd look at what's happened with Calvin Phillips. And
Yeah,
I'd think
but
to myself, well, they signed Calvin Phillips, who was brilliant when he played for Leeds. And this season he's played, what, just over an hour's worth of football? Like, as a
to be
footballer,
honest, yeah, I think you can say that, but I
and then
think
you look
Bellingham's
at,
head and shoulders above Calvin Phillips, and the fact that he's got the connection with Haaland.
yeah, of course. But then you look at
I
Real
think
Madrid, that like they signed Chouameni and Camavinga, and them two don't get regular game time either. They still prefer the old heads of Modric and Cruz. So you're kind of thinking, if you're Jude Bellingham, will I be another Chouameni? Because obviously they paid big money for him. Obviously, I think there was rumours today that they would be happy to sell him and recoup some of the money that they paid for him. So I think, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Liverpool's a foregone conclusion. We're definitely going to get him, but I'm saying that Liverpool offer something that other clubs don't offer, and at the same time, other clubs offer something that Liverpool don't offer. Man City, if Jude went to them, they would probably guarantee him a Premier League title at some point. I don't think Liverpool could guarantee him a Premier League title. If he went to Real Madrid, they could guarantee him La Liga. They could probably even throw Champions League in there.
this season.
Yeah. But, it's one of those things where I wouldn't rule Liverpool out of the running completely. I think Jude's quite a smart player, and I think he's thinking about his future. I think also you got to factor in his family. I think Liverpool have gone and met his dad and said about the possibility of his dad getting a scouting role at the club, maybe even bringing Joe Bellingham to them. So they're really trying to connect with his family and everything as well. So I don't know if Liverpool can be tempting, but even if we didn't have Jude, someone like Nicola Barella could play that role, box-to-box midfielder, getting up and down the pitch. Someone of that kind of stature, with that kind of energy and that kind of desire to get up and down for 90 minutes. It could work in the role that Henderson was put in today.
I think with Bellingham, you're looking at probably a minimum of 100 million to get him out.
I think Liverpool could afford that.
But then, Liverpool need 3 or 4 players.
Well,
so then, if you get Bellingham for 100 million, what other quality players are you going to get to fill in these other little gaps?
Well, so it depends a lot, obviously, how much Liverpool have to spend. I've heard rumours that we'd have 200 million. So if they spent half of that on Bellingham, I think there's been reports of Inter Milan are struggling financially now, so they would be willing to accept a £50 million offer for Barella. And then also Liverpool, it's not like we haven't gone out and picked up a bargain in the past. If you look at, for example, Thiago cost us 30 million. There will be another midfielder out there for 30 million that Liverpool could buy.
Yeah.
And then, let's not also say that Liverpool might sell players this year as well. At the end of the day, there's some players who, for example, Diogo Jota's been linked with, I think, Newcastle. So I reckon he would command. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's worth it, but if Newcastle came in for Jota, Liverpool would be saying we want 60 million for him, 70 million for him, knowing that Newcastle can afford it.
Yeah.
I think Newcastle have also been linked with Joe Gomez, so there's another £20 million, £25 million. So then all of a sudden we've just recouped the 100 million, almost recouped the 100 million that we paid for Bellingham, to then go out there and say, okay, well, what else do we need? Also,
I think it's a club that is quite exciting in terms of how they play, but I think in my opinion, I just think Bellingham now is too good to not be in the Champions League. I don't think he has to go anywhere that's not in the Champions League.
Potentially, but then what, for example...
There's no guarantees you'll make it next season.
No, but could you guarantee...
Man City, yeah, you guaranteed.
But could you guarantee... you can't guarantee anything. For example, if Man City get found guilty of breaching FFP, and then the FA decide to make an example out of them, point deduction or whatever else, we don't know what's going to happen next season. I think if you're Jude, you're looking at it thinking, it's probably why he's taken so long to make a decision about where he wants to go next season, because he's probably looking at it thinking, well, I could say Man City, but then if they get hit by big charges by the FA, who knows what? And obviously, I think everyone's expecting it to be a fine and a slap on the wrist, but it's something that you would consider as a player.
If Arsenal win the Premier League,
yes,
are they in the race to sign Bellingham?
I don't think Arsenal have got the financial power at the moment. You think Arsenal could afford to spend 100, 120 million pound on one player? then
because they don't need 5 players.
no, but
They could go
you
out and
could
spend
also
100 million
argue though
pound
that
on one player.
you could also argue though that Arsenal don't need Jude Bellingham.
I think any team would probably need it. Don't get me wrong, Bellingham won't go to Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal are big enough for him. I think it would be a good project for him, but similar to Liverpool in that sense. But
I think
I
what
just think
Arsenal need is an extended period of, for 4 or 5 years it was Liverpool, Man City, two biggest teams in England at that time, and Liverpool, when they weren't winning the league, they were finishing second by a point. They were getting 99 points when Man City were getting 100 points. If Arsenal win the league this year, it's great. But I think a lot of people will be looking at the league next year saying, okay, well, Man City are obviously going to come back stronger. They're going to go out and spend money and buy players. Newcastle are suddenly going to start spending money buying players. If Man United can get bought out, they'll end up going on a run and spending money and buying players. Suddenly, Arsenal go from Premier League winners to potentially being top 4 contenders again. And I think that then becomes part of the problem with Arsenal, is that I think Arsenal had a period of time where they were looking to develop the club, obviously from disappointments of previous years. I don't think Arteta seriously started this season saying, okay, we finished outside the Champions League last season. This season, we're going to win the league. I think he was looking at a top 4 finish, improvement on last year, constantly evolving and improving the squad year on year. And I think that he's found himself in a title race because Arsenal have just been so good that they might be ahead of schedule. So it depends on what Arsenal's ambitions are, I suppose.
But what I'm saying is, so if Liverpool finish 8th, where they are now, unlikely, but if they did, Arsenal win the league, are Liverpool more of a likely club to sign him over Arsenal?
I think, as I say, Liverpool have got advantages that other clubs don't have. Obviously, we all know Trent, Alexander-Arnold and Jordan Henderson have been buttering up on the England camp. One of Bellingham's heroes is admitted is Gerrard. He wants to follow in his footsteps. I think that Liverpool could offer certain things, like you will be made captain and you can follow into Gerrard's footsteps, that maybe someone like Bellingham would be like, you know what, I'll take being Liverpool captain. Could Man City offer him the captain's role? Probably not. When you look at who they've got in their squad, there's a lot of personalities. Maybe, is it Gundogan who's captain now?
Mixture, isn't it?
Yeah, so then you've got obviously the likes of De Bruyne, who would probably put a claim in to be captain. Possibly even some of the defenders, maybe, who would put a claim in to be captain. Obviously, it depends a lot on what they do with their squad next year. But then there's a lot of, if Liverpool want to go all out there and say, look, we'll make you captain, we'll make you the new Steven Gerrard, we'll put you up on a pedestal, this, that, and the other. And if they can compete in terms of wages with other clubs, it might be enough to turn his head and say, I'm not saying it's 100% set in stone. I don't know if, so obviously Steven Gerrard being one of his heroes, he probably has a bit of a connection with Liverpool that he doesn't have with Arsenal. So, for example,
I don't think he'll go to Arsenal, but I just think Arsenal. I don't think Liverpool are more exciting than Arsenal now.
Potentially, I think it depends on. I think it depends a lot on what Liverpool's plan is. So, I think Liverpool not being in the Champions League, like if you're a Liverpool fan, obviously you're looking at this season and almost winning every trophy available last season, to coming into this season, you're looking and you're thinking it's terrible. The world's about to end. And yeah, it's not been good. It's been hard to watch. The Man City for me was the most painful game of football I've ever watched. Just seeing a Liverpool team just give up and roll over. However, you could also look at it and say, okay, well, it's exciting because in many ways now it forces change at Liverpool. It means that Liverpool can't continue on the same road that they've been going down in the past. So therefore, they need new players. We need to bring some players in. At the start of this season, all the fans were saying, we need a new midfielder, we need a new midfielder. We went and bought Darwin Nunez, didn't get a new midfielder. Now we're looking at, and we're saying, okay, well, we need 2 or 3. And I don't think the Liverpool board, I don't think Jurgen Klopp can look at what's going to come and say, we can't spend any more money now. Like, we'll buy 1 midfielder and that's it. So Liverpool have a chance to rejuvenate. And if we don't have Europe next season, we have a full season with less fixtures than in the past to get that squad all together playing while getting. Let's also not forget that there was a shortened pre-season due to the World Cup. Liverpool and Chelsea played more games than any other team last season, and look at where both of those two teams are this season. So there is an argument to say that the amount of games that they've both played has had an impact on both of those two teams. So if Liverpool go out, strengthen their squad, bring in the reinforcements, they have a longer pre-season, the players will get a rest, and there's less games next season due to a lack of European football. Why would Liverpool not have as much of a chance of getting back into Europe as what Arsenal would do if they won the league?
I'm not saying they wouldn't.
So you wouldn't look at that then as a thing, because Liverpool have won the league obviously more recently than Arsenal. So you wouldn't, and have also won the Champions League more recently than any other team in the Premier League. So if you're Jude Bellingham, you're there thinking, well, if I want to win the Champions League one day, what team has done it in England?
Didn't Chelsea win it last?
Okay, yeah, so Chelsea won it, but obviously then if you look at Chelsea now, would he join Chelsea because they're not going to finish in Champions League next season?
No, I think the thing with Bellingham is his guys had screwed on. I don't think he'd go just for money. Like, money doesn't talk for him.
Yeah, so
Football talks. But yeah, I mean, it's a midfielder that everybody wants. I just think that Liverpool finishing outside the top four has hindered the chance of them signing him.
I think a lot of it depends as well on what newspaper you read. Some newspapers say that he won't go if there's no Champions League football next season. Some newspapers are saying that Champions League, it's not a factor. Obviously, I think if Jude does say to Liverpool, look, I'll join you outside the Champions League, I think there'll be something in his contract that says that if it's a sustained period, he can leave anyway. Maybe he'll protect himself that way because he's still only young. It was 19 years old. He could say, look, I'll join you, but I want it in my contract that if you fail to qualify for the Champions League, let's say 2 seasons in a row, I can then leave for X amount of money. So maybe there is a way of him covering himself for that possibility happening that might work out in his favour. If he's sensible and has his head screwed on, it might be something that he'll think about.
Yeah. We'll just see what happens, but it'd be an exciting one, wherever it goes.
So what I'd also like to do, though, is move the conversation slightly, go back to today's game. What is it now advantage Man City?
Yeah.
Obviously, Arsenal 6 points clear.
Yeah, Man City's got a game in hand. And
exactly. They have each other to play. Arsenal have Newcastle to play.
Yeah, I think it might sound a bit strange to some people, but I think the league's in Man City's hands now because I don't think Arsenal will beat Man City. Could they draw against Man City? Potentially.
Where is it?
At Man City.
So it just makes it even more difficult. I think the way Man City are playing at the moment, it would take a monumental effort from Arsenal to win that game.
Yeah, I don't think Arsenal will go and beat Man City at City. To be honest, it's too hard. And like I said a couple of episodes ago, I don't think Man City will lose another game in the Premier League now. To be honest, and it's a shame because I think this season, now we're at this point at this season, whilst no one would have expected to win the league, and it's more of a fortunate season for Arsenal. I'm not saying they haven't deserved where they're at because they have, but it's a more fortuitous season for them. For them to lose it now would be quite harsh on the players and the fans.
I think you could look at it from that point of view, but then I feel like the first half an hour of today's game, Arsenal should have ran away with it. They should have put the game out of sight from Liverpool's point of view. Like, okay, first goal, good run from Saka, good movement to start outside, cut inside, then play the ball through. I think they were a little bit fortunate in the way that the ball was tried to be reversed back to Saka, but Van Dijk got his toe on it and it ended up deflecting it to Martinelli. After that moment, like you say, Trent was being exposed on the right-hand side time and time again. Arsenal should have done more. And then if whether it's me that's right in that Liverpool forced a tactical shift in Arsenal, whether it's you that's right, where Arteta looked at it and thought, we'll defend the 2-1 now.
I don't think he said to defend. I think he just said to be dangerous on the counter.
But
so let's not push so high up. Let's not press so high up.
Does that not? Does that not, in some respects, show a little bit of naivety on Arteta's part? Because if perhaps there was a few times where, for example, Arsenal were pressing high, the ball was going back to Alisson, and Alisson looked a little bit ropey with his, with the ball at his feet.
I'd say that. I think the goal before half time for Liverpool, not only does it change team talks, it changed the dynamic of the game, but it also starts the crowd up again. And everyone knows that Anfield's a horrible ground to go for an away team, and the fans get on top of you, etc. So when you come out in the second half, and from an Arsenal perspective, you're not so high up, you're not pressing so high, and then Liverpool are starting to build momentum. It's hard to shift that, especially when you've got the fans on like shouts and stuff. Because if the fans in the second half, especially, were on top of Liverpool, I mean, I don't know if they're saying like in a sense of get on with it kind of thing, that let's sort it out, or come on boys, we can do this. But
I think the fans and Liverpool responded together. I think that the moment that Xhaka challenge on Trent went in, A, it pumped up the crowd, but B, it pumped up Trent. As a result of pumping up Trent, it then pumped up the rest of the Liverpool team. I think that moment was like one of the only times I've seen this season where, there's been games where the especially at Anfield, where the crowd have carried Liverpool through. There's been games where, for example, Man United, where Liverpool and also Bournemouth, where Liverpool's football is excellent and the fans are responding to it. I think that's the only time where I've seen a moment in a game that suddenly fired up every single person who's associated with Liverpool at one time. It was almost like that was a spark that...
It was stupid from Xhaka. I don't know why he's done that.
And it just
There's no need for it.
Yeah, but I would have expected, or at least sitting there watching the game anyway, I was thinking, okay, Liverpool have gone in the stronger of the two sides. They've pulled it back to 2-1. They're looking better. Tails are up. They're looking like they're going to go for it. If you're Arsenal, you think, opening 10 minutes of the second half, they're going to come at us. They can soak it up. Maybe then you go counter-attacking football, keep it at 2-1, and then look to start to play your way again, and then maybe try and kill the game off.
I think that's probably what he done.
But then it was almost like they never... They soaked up the pressure, but then they never reset to Arsenal at the start of the game, if that makes sense. It was almost like...
but that's what I'm saying. I don't think they ever intended to go back to the first half way of playing. I think their intention was to soak it up and hit Liverpool on the counter. And I think the longer the game went on, the more prone to a counter-attack Liverpool was likely. But at the same time, I think Arsenal struggled to get it out, and I think at times they panicked in the clearance and stuff. And then when they did show a little bit of composure, there were chances where we could have broke, but we didn't. And I think take away the penalty that Salah missed again. If Firmino wouldn't, I know it's saying silly because he scored, but if Firmino doesn't come on the pitch, I don't think you get back. I don't think you equalise in that game. I couldn't see anyone scoring for you as much as you was pressing.
Whilst I agree, I think that if Firmino's not there, that's where Darwin's normally attacking. And as silly as it is to say, a Darwin chance in the air, for me, feels more dangerous than a Darwin chance with the ball at his feet.
In the air, yeah.
Darwin,
but I don't know if
well, that's normally the area that he's attacking when the ball's going across like that. But either way, like the Liverpool obviously changed it to go up with 4 attackers, and that was the reason why they was looking for that one chance. And obviously, Trent managed to give Zinchenko a little bit of what Trent's been having the whole game, and it leads to a goal. And it's Arsenal had a chance at a counter-attack, I think, a Martinelli ball where Salah, to Saka, where I think Alisson was very clever in that moment, knew exactly what was going to happen, and done the Manuel Neuer sweeper keeper role of coming out and clearing that up. Other
I
than
think
that,
after it went to 2-2, I think there's more likely. I mean, if it wasn't for Ramsdale twice,
yeah,
obviously Liverpool win that game. And I think on the second half, the way that it went, if Liverpool would have sneaked that 3-2, as frustrating it would have been, I think from a second half perspective, it might have been justified.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, Firmino's the highest scoring player against Arsenal. I think
almost. I
nearly.
think
Fowler, is it?
Fowler's on 12, Firmino's now on 11, which
11.
obviously, as he's leaving the end of the season, he's not going to get to beat Fowler's record. But
Yeah. Firmino is the most dangerous player you've had for a long time.
the thing about
I
Firmino, which is
don't know why they play him.
well, the one thing I'll always say about Firmino and anyone who ever wants to criticise it, look what Firmino was doing against Arsenal today. He was winning the ball on the halfway line.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important things about this Liverpool structure that we've had for a long time is that you've got strikers winning the ball high up the pitch. He's making tackles, he's winning the ball, he's getting the ball, and then he's laying it off to the left or the right, however you want to look at it. And I think, when he's pressing, that then encourages the rest of the team to press. If the striker can do it, then everyone else can do it. And his tackle.
And it's not going to play. Come on.
I was going to say his win percentage in terms of tackles, it's actually quite high. I don't know what the actual figures are, but I know when we bought him from Hoffenheim, he was one of the top tackle percentage win rate in the Bundesliga at that point. He's actually very good at winning the ball back. So yeah, he'll be
clever. But he's not going to play 90 minutes for 38 games a season. Of course he's not. But I don't know why he doesn't start for 60 minutes a game.
Because of the way that Gakpo and
I think Firmino's far more dangerous.
potentially, but I think the way Liverpool operate is that if you noticed a lot what was happening today is that Gakpo was swapping between centre and left wing, and Jota was also swapping and moving around. So I don't think Firmino can do that role. I think if Firmino plays, he's very much the central player.
I think if Firmino plays 30 games, I think he gets 15 to 20 goals.
Potentially, but I think it's just an evolution of the Liverpool lineup. Another problem that he's had as well is injuries, obviously, and he's getting to that point now where maybe we've got one too many players with injuries, and he's looking at more players that he can rely on for longer in the season. So, Thiago, for example, I think on average we get like 20 games a season out of him, which is why everyone's saying we need 3 centre midfielders rather than relying on Thiago as being one of those. So there's that problem. Then it's his age as well. Like Liverpool have got to evolve their strike force at some point. So why not do it now and then try and bed in the players going forward? Whether, because obviously Diaz is back from injury now. It's going to make it a lot more interesting as to what's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Liverpool's strike force evolves going forward, whether it's going to be Diaz, Gakpo, Salah, or whether Darwin plays in there or Jota plays in there, or how Liverpool orchestrate and move it around. But when you just take those names in general, Firmino with age on his side and injury record would be the logical choice to drop out of that forward line.
But if you know that he's going to score your goals, you probably create 15 more as well.
Yeah, true. But let's put a bit of credit into Gakpo as well. Like Gakpo, he hasn't played this role before. He's come in. He's had to pick up a new role. Has been more of a centre forward than an out and out striker, and he's done it quite well. So and he only joined in January. So who knows? Next season, maybe Gakpo adds more goals to his game in that particular role, and then you look and think, well, we don't need Firmino anymore. But obviously, it's Firmino's choice to leave. I think Liverpool would offer him a contract extension if he wanted to stay. And so we're looking now and we're thinking it's advantage Man City. What do you see today as being 2 points lost for Arsenal or 1 point gained?
I think there's probably an argument to go through both different feelings, because at the time of when Liverpool scored, you would think it's 2 points lost, but then that next 5 minutes after that, 8 minutes, then you could probably say that, okay, I'll take the draw because they're very nearly lost.
Yeah.
I think if you was to ask any Arsenal fan before the game, I think the majority of them would probably have accepted a draw there. It's probably one of the hardest places to go, if not the hardest place. Like Liverpool haven't conceded a goal at Anfield this year, and obviously they certainly haven't lost league. That is not anything else. So if Arsenal to come and get 2 goals, look good, dominate for 40 minutes, I think it shows how far Arsenal have come. But yeah, I think the point was fair.
I think Arsenal and Liverpool have always had good games.
Yeah,
I don't think
always has no
I
choice.
don't think I've ever seen a boring Arsenal Liverpool, especially not like perhaps under the Klopp era. Even probably going into Brendan Rodgers as well. Like they've always been good games. I remember a 4-4, Arshavin scoring 4 goals. There was, last season's game was there a 5-1 thrown in the mix or something along those lines? There's
Liverpool win it, then I forget it.
yeah. Then I think there's always been good games. So I think I was expecting a good game today.
Yeah, there's 2 exciting teams, isn't it? It's 2 fast-paced teams. It's 2 teams that like to control and press forward. And I think it lived up to that. I mean, even the reverse fixture at the Emirates was a good game.
Yeah.
3-2. But that was a good game as well. So
one thing,
yeah,
one thing that I would like to ask you. I was thinking the other day. Now, hear me out. Might sound foolish at the start. Arsenal remind me a lot of Liverpool. They brought in a new manager. Obviously, Klopp's first season, we weren't anywhere near winning the league. He then brings in his tactics, his changes. He starts to bring in some new players. Liverpool then suddenly start challenging. Arteta's first season with Arsenal doesn't look good. There's talks of him getting the sack at the start. Then he has time on his side. He brings in his tactics. He brings in his changes. He brings in the players he wants to bring. And then suddenly now Arsenal are looking like a good team, looking like potentially they could win the league. So there's a lot of similarities that you can draw between the 2 squads. But the thing that I worry about with Arsenal is that if Man City go and spend money again in the summer, which by all accounts it looks likely. I think Gundogan's leaving at the end of the season. There's talk that Bernardo Silva wants to go and join Barcelona. And I think there's some other players as well. Well, there's talk about whether they'll be there. So obviously Man City are going to go and spend money, and obviously they can afford to spend money. Then you've got Newcastle that are now on the horizon who, they've already spent, I think like £260 million on new players. They're obviously going to go and strengthen and buy more new players next season. Then you have Chelsea, who, following on from this season, are obviously going to go and spend money. They're probably going to go and throw £300 million on strikers. What do you see is going to be the future for Arsenal? Is it going to be they're going to hit this season now? Let's say they win the Premier League for argument's sake, and then they settle into a battling for top 4 every season? Or what do you think Arsenal need to do to remain competitive with the teams that can outspend them?
I don't always think it's about outspending. I think if you spend £200 million but haven't got a good manager, it doesn't really matter, because I don't think you'll win the league. Like if you look at these teams that have got money, Man City, like Newcastle now, they've got good managers. Like Eddie Howe's a good manager. Obviously Guardiola's probably the best in the world at the moment. And then if you look on the flip side, if you look at teams that have got money but had probably not the best manager, i.e. Chelsea, with Potter, then that's what happens. So I don't think there's any guarantees that is the case. I think Arsenal do need to invest a bit more. I don't think they are in a dire position to bring in 5 new players, but I think they could certainly get in a couple more. But I think winning the league this season, if they do it, is a big step for them. I don't think anyone would have predicted it, as I said earlier. So I think if they was to win it this season and just finish in the top 4 for the for the next couple of seasons. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. I think they need that period of stability of getting into Champions League and generating more revenue and bringing in that quality player here and there kind of thing. So I don't. I mean, me personally, I'm not a full Arsenal fan, but I don't think I'd personally mind if they won the league this season and finished third for the next 2-3 years. As long as obviously they keep making progress in terms of players and stuff, because I don't think that it was odds on for them to win it this season.